All right, so we're excited about the next part. We will do, just as a recap, we're going to talk through two amazing case studies. And I must say, it is very intimidating for people to tell their story. There is so much value in hearing the story for the rest of the community. But it is very intimidating, and it does take a lot of time to put it together. So just as a precursor and as a disclaimer, so we thank everybody that will be on stage with us today. And we will kick it off. First of all, on my right, sorry, I didn't introduce you. I'm so used to Gary always being here. So those of you familiar with Gary Lowenstein, he is our grey wizard, Gandalf the Grey, at Element 8, sales engineer, fantastic person to also just have a conversation with around, building an application. So Gary will actually join me for these sessions. He was quite close to the process of looking at the applications. And we will kick it off with, first of all, with Afrilek. I'm going to invite to the stage Damien de Aruda from Afrilek and Rajiv Singh from Shu Powders. And please give them a warm welcome to help them on. Thank you. There's Rajiv. Oh, there's Rajiv. I thought you've run, Rajiv.
I'm sit here next to the grey wizard.
All right, so I'm going to move up a bit so I can see you guys. So before we get into the application itself it's not recent. As you'll see from the slide there, this is a project that was initiated in 2020. Can you believe it? It's been that long already. Eh? So it's not recent. It's been a long term in the making agile approach project. But maybe before we get into the details, Rajiv, we'll start with you, and then Damien, if you can give us your kind of your title, your role, and a little bit of background behind Shu Powders and what the business is and what you look after.
Okay, yeah. So thank you for inviting us. So I'm Rajiv Singh, operations manager of Shu Powders. Shu Powders is a cobalt manufacturing company. We're the only one in Africa, and we basically 98% of our customers are abroad in Europe, America, and in Japan. And a few years ago, we embarked on a journey together with PwC, the auditing firm, on a lean manufacturing journey, whereby we needed to remain competitive in this industry. The cobalt markets were very unstable as such. And so we embarked on this lean manufacturing journey, and we got introduced to Afrilek via PwC, who then partnered up with us and took us on a digital journey, whereby we had a phased approach, and we worked from one end of our plant to the other end, not yet complete. We also with the pressure of the ESG requirements, we had to take this approach. Most of our European customers also wants us to meet certain requirements, and we've seen how Ignition can, help us support those requirements as well. So we do have some big customers that many might know, some like Bosch, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, and it was a great journey, and I think, maybe Damon can explain a bit more.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, my name is Damien. I'm the BU manager for smart manufacturing at Afrilek Automation. As Rajiv mentioned, we were a technical implementation partner for this project. We weren't necessarily responsible for scoping and managing the project and so on and so on. But perhaps just a bit of history regarding this. This was actually our very first perspective project. So looking at the date, 2020, it's basically when Perspective launched.
That's right.
And we went right in there. Boom.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first Perspective applications, certainly
perhaps.
in our market. Yeah. That was brave, Damien.
Hey, I was ready. There were very many diverse requirements that sort of demanded the need for Ignition, perhaps just as a general platform. There were competing offers on the table for more custom developed solutions. And I think I think we made a good decision by going with ignition for this particular project because of the capability that it's enabled and the journey that we've been able to take with Shu. Yeah.
Fantastic. So the requirements were, initially it was complete end-to-end. So kind of raw materials all the way through to finished product right through. It wasn't a specific application case, a functional part of a plant. It was essentially the entire process.
I would say yes, that was sort of the end goal.
Okay.
The end goal was more of like a consolidated system that did more than just plant visualization.
Unified view.
Yeah. So it started off with one part of the process, but quickly, once we started realizing the capabilities of it, then it expanded to this and that and that and that and that and that. And ultimately, the scope sort of grew like almost exponentially because the capabilities were, it was unlocked.
Okay.
Innovation unleashed.
Okay. All right. So maybe talk us through then the initial problems that you were looking to solve and the requirements. Let's maybe kick off with that. So we talk here about siloed information. Lots of paper processes, manual paper processes. I would imagine clipboards, whiteboards, those kind of things.
Yeah, like Rajiv alluded to, the environmental requirements of the European customers sort of demanded very high levels of traceability, quality control, traceability, that kind of thing. So the auditing process is particularly important for them. In fact, they do environmental audits. I don't know how often you guys are always doing audits. And every time there's an audit, it's always like, okay, where did this product come from? What happened? Where was it through this process? Why was it the way it is? So a lot of this was very paper-driven, like we were saying, and obviously being able to consolidate that information from a very paper-driven process is it's an immense exercise. I mean, having to dig back years and years, how do you do that? It's simply a big challenge.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So genealogy, traceability, rolling all of that up with the assurance that you need that the data is available if you need the data, and then providing a unified view.
Yep.
Okay.
And not only that, the process itself is obviously quite dangerous. It's an explosive environment. So being able to remotely monitor process parameters, to be able to receive alerts of those things, those are critical to save human lives. The truth of the matter is that if something goes wrong by accident, perhaps there's an instrument failure, people will die. And that's a significant risk that must be mitigated.
Yeah.
So having systems in place to be able to do that, significantly reduces their liability. It also increases worker safety and that kind of thing.
Cool. So challenges. I see there's a whole list of challenges. I would imagine you kind of on inception rolling out, you encountered your first kind of challenges that usually comes in the form of connectivity and devices. I'm very happy to see that there's only one bullet point for solution.
Yes. What is the solution? We put down ignition.
But many challenges, as we typically have. Can you maybe give us the lowlights of kind of the main challenges that you had as part of the initial project?
Yeah. So as Rajiv mentioned, there was a drive for like lean processes and a lot of that kind of thing, driven with the consulting partner. So essentially, the idea was to present all of this information to the very specific people. So there's lab personnel, there's operators, there's maintenance teams, there's senior management, there's middle management, there's directors, shareholders, the whole toot. So there's a lot of information that needed to be collected. There's a lot of information that needs to be made available globally, not necessarily only locally. And there's various systems that we need to collect information from and so on. And obviously our solution in this case was primarily ignition at the start. Mm-hmm. However, as we encountered new challenges, it started to expand. We started running into performance limitations of the SQL-based historians, so we put down Canary to resolve a lot of those challenges. We then started involving other things like standard operating procedures, all of that, and then we started incorporating Sepasoft into the solution.
Okay. And then the result is currently, and I know it's ongoing, and in many ways it will always be ongoing, otherwise it's perfect. So it'll always be a work in progress. There's always something to enhance and to do better. But right now you refer to it as unified operations. And Rajiv, from your point of view, does it feel like a unified system with unified operations? Does it feel like that objective is at least closer, or at least it's closer to that objective of a unified view?
Yeah, yeah. From my side as well, I think having unified operations also, from a business point, you save a lot of cost. So I can give you some stats. Prior to installing Ignition, we used to have a recycle rate that was above 6%, with a target of 5%. Our target's now 1%.
Wow.
So we are able to manage and control the process. So we have a very complicated process at the onset. We have a furnace with 13 different zones, and you have to control each zone in order to get a proper finished product on the other end. And in the past, as Damien mentioned earlier, there was a lot of paperwork. We literally had operators dedicated to running around with a logbook, logging information.
Yep.
And now we can just go into the system and pull back information since it was installed. So what comes with the cost save, apart from just saving on recycle, our process is kind of interlinked. So when these recycle, then we get scrap product generated, which we can't recycle, and we basically sell it at a loss. And so that takes care of scrap. A big portion that Damien mentioned as well is safety. So our process is very explosive, where we manufacture hydrogen from decomposing ammonia, and we don't store it, but if we cannot get the process right, you just don't only get recycled, but you can have an explosion, which can basically be fatal. So from that perspective, we have full control. The alerts that we get through to make changes are great. It allows us to basically be proactive. In the past, we had to wait for 6 hours to see what comes out as finished product, and then react. We've already got a few tons of recycle and so on. Now, when we see we can see the problem before it happens, basically, and we can react immediately. I think Ignition has basically helped us since it was installed, and there's great benefits. It all has a ripple effect as well.
Perfect. So the technology is one aspect. I think the way that it was deployed was the fantastic bit. So there's visibility now, and there's the ability to make a decision faster, which is the value of information as opposed to just raw data.
Yeah.
Cool. Damien, do you want to talk through any of the other results before we look at the architecture? Some things that stand out?
No, I think we've largely covered a lot
Yeah,
of these
I think
results,
probably the only one was the mobile aspect,
Yes.
which I think is probably important.
Correct, yes.
Because there is a massive design consideration there.
Yes, 100%. That was one of the big things. Mobile first means that we're working with devices that aren't the same. They're never the same screen size. We need to be able to flexibly adjust to these screen sizes. And how do you design around that? Because you don't have infinite real estate to work with. So it's a particular problem to do that, like sort of mobile first design. Yeah.
So with mobile first, sorry, Gary, just mobile first. So there's different types of clients, naturally. There's a workstation kind of a client that you would typically expect on an HMI. There's a web client that is accessible via any browser on any device. And then you have the app, the Perspective app. So in terms of mobile first, what were some of the discussions around accessibility, whether it's the app, whether it's simply a web page? What did that look like?
There wasn't really a big discussion around that. The important part was that there was flexibility.
Okay.
And that was ultimately the real thing. That was essentially the requirement. And whatever whether we use the browser version or we use Perspective app, was somewhat immaterial. If there was a specific requirement, like we need a GPS, for example, then we would use the app, obviously, but predominantly, it wasn't a big concern.
Okay. Just a quick question, Damien. So you've got mobile security is obviously a big concern. How are you securing the system?
Yeah, so this is now like a joint thing with their IT team. So all of our systems are accessible remotely, which means that we've got to do secure tunnels back to the site. We then have to have the correct user permissions. We've got security zones. We've got dedicated logins. We've got that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a joint venture. It's not just Ignition doing everything here. It's IT being fairly deeply involved. But that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the architecture, maybe fairly self-explanatory, but maybe give us an idea of what it is. It looks like a typical site server architecture.
Yes, that's correct. So we've got redundancy, obviously, because of the safety aspect. Mm-hmm. I've simplified it down to one PLC, but that's quite frankly not a true representation of the site. It's in fact many PLCs on site.
Okay.
But we do have 4 separate databases that these Ignition gateways are managing.
Sorry, the PLCs, multiple brands, models?
Yes,
okay.
Correct. All managed by a separate contractor who was doing the existing automation. We do have one cloud-based database, mm-hmm. and this is now for the more enterprise-level reporting. Mm-hmm. But essentially, in a nutshell, this is roughly what it looks like. Obviously, physically, it's not looking like this, but it's fairly simple like this.
Okay.
Essentially, the important part of the journey is about the traceability.
Yeah.
So basically, every process that we're working with has got raw materials that are put into a process that then becomes work in progress material, and we're allocating lab results to it, and ultimately it becomes finished goods.
Okay, and you have a lot of IDs and tracking.
Yeah.
Through.
So essentially, what we're looking at here is just this is where typically they're scheduling work orders. So they're scheduling it for a specific client. It's being allocated a work order number or lot number that they refer to it as. We're determining a product. We're determining various aspects, how much, and so on and so on. And then we're allocating it to the furnace, which is then ultimately going to produce this material. It's just a management screen.
Okay.
This is the desktop version.
Yes.
There are equivalent mobile versions, obviously. Yeah. But just for simplicity's sake. So essentially, this is just about management of work orders.
Perfect. And the scheduling, is that from the ERP or?
So at this point, no. This is because back then we weren't working with that, but it will eventually get there.
Okay.
So now talking about our raw material. Now in this case, we have got raw material that is received from a supplier overseas. Perhaps maybe we can actually go into the next slide if you don't mind, which just shows a different thing. So in fact, what we've actually done, they receive a Excel sheet from their supplier to say this is the stock that's currently on its way to you. Mm-hmm. So what we had to do was we developed an interface where we could just take that Excel sheet, drag and drop it into Ignition, and suddenly Ignition is aware of all of the raw material that's inbound. This demo just showed we can just drag and drop it in. That red indicates that we haven't found this material in our database before, so we are aware whether we've dragged in a previous Excel sheet by mistake, so that we don't over-allocate all these things.
So there is validation.
Yes, correct.
Fantastic.
Yeah, there is.
Fantastic.
Then over and beyond this, we then also receive a COA, which is a certificate of analysis from the supplier to say this is the current quality of the material that we're receiving. Mm-hmm. So very similar interface. We then drag that in. It immediately allocates it to the correct material. And then the lab teams have this result available to them, and they can then, when they're doing their own internal validation of these results, they then can see this is what the supplier reported it as, this is what we reported it as, and then this information is actually available to operators who then choose which raw material bags they want to make available as well.
Seemingly such a simple thing, but prior to having this ability, having an Excel sheet, what did that look like for you, Rajiv, and or for the team?
Yeah, it was manual capturing.
Exactly. Yeah, and then you've got the possibility of human error, and okay, all right.
So the next portion that we're looking at here is just a mobile view of the furnace, in fact. I think there is a video associated with this. I don't think it's playing. But essentially, we've got this interface where we're representing the part of the process. We've intentionally designed it as somewhat like a standard, an interface that people are sort of used to. So we've done it like a scrolling format, like Facebook or Instagram, where you can scroll through the process. But the important part of this was that we needed to try and replicate the function that's available within the desktop environment. So the pop-ups and so on that are here in mobile, there are no pop-ups. It is all about navigation and so on and so on. But functionally, it operates exactly the same. And in this particular process, we're just showing here about these forms that we then had to build in, because obviously not everything is automated.
You didn't use Iggy to build the forms?
Say again?
You didn't use Iggy to build the forms?
No.
Like Kevin did?
No. This was manually built. But essentially, the idea here is to try and reduce the amount of human error. So instead of manually typing in which raw material bag we're using, there is a drop-down. And we get that drop-down from the currently in stock material, and so on and so on. And then we can choose whether we're feeding in recycled material or whether we're feeding in raw material or whatever it might be. So there's various aspects of that.
Fantastic.
Then as far as our process goes, this is now a bit more advanced later that we added, but essentially when the furnace, we've got a state machine that's monitoring the parameters of the furnace. When we detect that the furnace goes into a certain state, we then trigger an event in the Sepasoft modules that creates this form that we then need to check, that the operators now need to fill in to be able to start the furnace.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's again sort of incorporating the SOPs and that type of thing. Instead of it being manual on a paper, now we've got this stored digitally. It's available for everyone to look at.
Start up, shut down, and is that electronically signed off or user-specific sign-off?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I want to say it's a bit immature. It's not quite fully expanded to everything. We've started with the furnace.
Okay.
Yeah, but it will grow. And then obviously the requirement was that it is mobile capable, so we've got exactly the same thing on mobile.
Fantastic.
Then obviously now we've got work in progress material. Now we are allocating lab results to this. So this is just a representation of the mobile dashboard that we've got to show our lab data is allocated to a specific sample, and we can then relate this back to a specific work order, and so on and so on. But this is obviously a very generic view that can be used by an operator to see, okay, the process is trending out of control, so we need to make a correction, or we don't need to make a correction, or whatever it might be.
That very visual understanding of it.
Yeah, yes, correct. However, the need is that we would perhaps, we can actually go to the next one. The need is that we might want to look in more granular detail, specifically the parameters of the process that caused this sample.
Okay.
So there's a lot of math that went into this thing, and the reporting module sort of was really like a game changer in this. The ability to have that scripting data source means that we could incorporate a fairly specialized report into Ignition directly. We didn't need to do this anywhere else. It looks simple, but man, this was a pain.
We'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Oh, goodness me.
Yeah.
So yeah, in terms of understanding the parameters, this is essentially where we can do our golden batch comparison.
Okay, so the complexity was in the calculations and the associated data.
Yeah, correct, because there isn't, the data isn't immediately available within the controller, so we've got to do like a whole bunch of stuff to get it going.
And these reports, are they available as PDF, emailed, downloaded?
Yeah, so all of the reports that are on site are available ad hoc. There are no scheduled reports.
Okay.
We can do them, obviously.
Rajiv can claim the midnight reports, like Mediclinic did.
Yeah. Rajiv doesn't go and generate the midnight reports, I believe.
No.
But the nice thing is that we can just go and generate the midnight report whenever we
Whenever we
want.
want.
Yeah.
So that's exactly the flexibility we wanted. And then, now we've gotten to packing. So in some cases, there's operator error. So we've got 2 tables here where we've done a best effort guess on which work order these materials have been allocated to. And then also the ones that we miss, or perhaps there's user input error. We can then take this and allocate them to the correct work orders.
See.
And here's an example now. The MD overseas, he wants to see, he's getting a complaint from a customer saying, where's my stuff? And now he can log on and look at this production tracker, go to their specific order and see, okay, it went through this step, this step, this step, this step, and this step, and now we're at this part of the process. This is actually the full sequence where we've actually gone from start to finish. But essentially we've got like this full traceability for that work order to say, okay, it's stuck over here.
Very visual, granular view of exactly where in the process the order is.
Yeah. And obviously this is like a full audit trail, so we can see who started this process, who finished that process, all of that kind of thing. So
Lovely.
that does have different visualizations.
Very nice.
And then relating back to that, now if you want to develop additional insights to see, okay, this thing is stuck in a blending state, why are we stuck in a blending state? And this is just an example of their maintenance. So again, we're looking at downtime. We then categorizing the downtime per machine. There's various contexts that we analyze or that we're allocating to this. But just for that visual thing to see, okay, we've had downtime in this area or this machine or whatever it might be.
But you also have the drill down capability.
In this case, not yet.
Okay.
But on the enterprise reporting side, yes.
Okay,
So
got
on
you.
site, no.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's quite a lot. Over 5 years.
Yeah, it's a whole
Lot of
scope
lot of
of
integrations.
requirements that have been taken on here.
Okay.
So it's a very comprehensive system.
Yeah.
It's intimidating to maintain, but thankfully, we've got systems in place that are modular, and we're able to, maintain all of it. Yeah.
So that was a brief overview, as you can imagine, of what the system is in the background. Maybe as future expansion, future plan, anything specific planned, Rajiv, or what other?
Yeah, I think in our next phase, we're going to probably move into our warehousing. We're currently busy with the implementation of an ERP system where we'll need Ignition to feed into as well. So I think, warehousing, and probably Damien has some ideas for us as well.
Yeah, I've got plans, but got to make the budgets available. But pretty much there's the ability to now expand is opened up. We can basically solve any production-related problem with the platform that's in place.
Yeah, once the data is consolidated and mapped and associated correctly where it should be, it makes everything else a lot easier as well. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Any questions for Damien or Rajiv? So the question was that there is a lot of MES ERP type functionality in the application. If that is embedded in the system, part of another system, and how that will evolve. So that very good question. Probably should have clarified that right in the beginning.
Yeah, so it's actually that because of that, it's actually very difficult to manage the scope of these types of projects, because technically Ignition will be able to do all of this. But just because we can doesn't mean we should. So at a certain point, there was a request to even do invoicing and things from Ignition, and I had to say, whoa, we're not an ERP system. There needs to be sort of a distinguishing line to say, this is where we hand over now to a purpose-built system that is perhaps managed by a separate vendor or whatever it might be. But as far as all of the function that we saw, everything is currently being done by Ignition, and then there are certain handovers to other systems. But as and when the system grows, some of this function will be taken away, and then we will simply be integrating with that new endpoint which will achieve the same outcome but in a more automated way.
Maybe to add to the MES specific functionality is, so you would have seen Sepasoft, which we haven't really had time to spend too much time on today. I think we've alluded and mentioned it. So they are being modular ignition. Everything is available as a module, and it's exactly the same for the Sepasoft MES module. So there's essentially a batch module, an OEE module, a track and trace module. So in similar fashion that you would, example, deploy a reporting module, you would have a module for very specific MES functions. That's adding to that question. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.